Hello, children. This is Miss Gloria from New Life Church, and we're having our very last lesson on the Ten Commandments. So let's read that commandment, the 10th commandment, and see what it says. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. So covet is not a word that we use very often. What does covet mean? Covet is a word for when you're jealous, or maybe we would say envious. If you're jealous of somebody or you envy them, that means that you want what they have. You see that they have something you don't have and you want it. So I have a sheaf of grain here. I colored it green because for some reason people talk about being green with jealousy or green with envy. I don't know why it's green. People don't really turn green when they're jealous, but it's sort of interesting. So I colored the sheaf of grain green to remember that, and I put our don't sign on it. So here's our sign for this time. Don't be jealous. Why is this a sheaf of grain? Well, the answer to that question is because we're going to tell the story of Joseph. And in that story, sheaves of grain come in. Let's find out why. Here's a sheaf of grain to be Joseph. I colored it all kinds of bright colors. And that's because what people really remember about Joseph the most often was that he had a brightly colored coat and all different kinds of bright colors. Why did he have this special coat in bright colors? Well, his father gave it to him, and his brothers figured that that meant that the father liked him the best. And maybe they were right about that. Maybe their father did like Joseph better. Joseph had 10 older brothers and one brother who was a baby that was younger than him. And sometimes his older brothers would go out with their animals, and Joseph's father would send him out to see how they were doing and come back, and he would tell stories about them, and they felt like Joseph was telling them all the time when they did something wrong. Anyway, they were mad at him. So Joseph's family had a farming kind of life, and other than taking care of animals, they also took care of grain. And when the grain was ripe, they would tie it up in sheaves that look like this. So I'm going to get some sheaves to show all of Joseph's brothers. I'll put this one here. So Joseph, one day, they were all working out in the fields, tying up their sheaves of grain, and Joseph said, I had this funny dream last night. I dreamed we were all tying up sheaves of grain, just like we're doing now, and all of your sheaves of grain bowed down to my sheaf of grain. Well, the brothers were pretty mad when they heard that, because they thought it meant that Joseph thought that they would bow down to him like he was king or going to be in charge of them or something. They didn't like that at all. But Joseph had dreams all the time. And one day, he told his brothers about a different dream he had. And in this dream, he said to his brothers, guess what this other dream I had was? In this other dream, there was the sun and the moon and a whole bunch of stars, and they all bowed down to me, just like that dream with the sheaves of grain. Then his brothers were really mad. They thought that the stars stood for them, and the sun stood for their father, and the moon stood for their mother. They said, do you think your whole family is going to bow down to you, including the father and the mother and everybody? They were really jealous of Joseph. And you know, because they were jealous of Joseph, they ended up doing some bad things. First, they thought they might even kill Joseph. They were so jealous. But they didn't kill him. They ended up selling him as a slave. And they lied to his father and said he was dead. And they did all kinds of other things. But you know, in the end, they did end up bowing down to Joseph. If you read the whole story of Joseph in the Bible, you'll discover that God used Joseph in order to save them. But still, what his brothers did were really wrong, and it made them very unhappy. It made their father unhappy. It made everybody unhappy. Because when we're jealous of other people, when we focus on what other people have and don't be grateful for the things that we have, then all kinds of bad things happen. Let's read about that in the Bible. In James it says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire but do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. And when you do ask, you do not receive, because you ask with wrong motives that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. James talks about this a lot. It's not enough to just follow rules and be good on the outside. We have to think about what our hearts are like on the inside. If our hearts are always full of bad feelings about what other people have, then all kinds of bad things will happen. Let's listen to what else James says. He says, Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For when you have envy and selfish ambition, then you find disorder in every evil practice. So you see, when we do bad things, that comes out of bad things that are inside of our hearts. So we need to think about our hearts. And one of the things we need to think about is not to be jealous of what other people have. So let's remember the end of the Ten Commandments. Don't be jealous.